Have you ever been dropped into a brand new situation, maybe a demanding new role, or I don't know, a totally unfamiliar environment, and everyone else just seems to get it, like they effortlessly navigate the unspoken rules
Mhm.
while you feel completely lost? Or perhaps you've watched a significant opportunity slowly drift away because you simply couldn't bring yourself to take that crucial first step.
Right. That feeling of being stuck or overwhelmed, maybe even paralyzed by uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's incredibly common, isn't it?
It really is, and it often has roots far deeper than we realize.
Absolutely.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the fascinating world of mindsets. We've gathered insights from a rich collection of sources, some really candid personal anecdotes that reveal these profound internal shifts, groundbreaking psychological research, and some truly inspiring real world transformations.
Yeah, the goal here, our mission, is really to uncover the core beliefs that quietly, often unconsciously, shape how you interpret your world and, crucially, how you respond to every challenge.
Ultimately, we want to reveal how you can consciously harness the immense power of a growth mindset to unlock entirely new possibilities in your life.
At its heart, this whole exploration centers on one fundamental distinction: the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but it's huge.
Right. One sees abilities, intelligence, even personality as static, inherent qualities like you're born with it,
Yeah.
just fixed internal programming.
Exactly. And the other sees them as dynamic,
Yeah.
as developable through persistent effort, focused learning, and importantly, embracing challenges.
And the practical difference this single distinction makes, it's truly profound. Okay, let's unpack
Yeah,
this.
let's get into it.
Our journey into understanding mindsets often begins with a very personal, almost primal experience. One of our key sources shares a childhood just filled with moments where a fixed mindset seemed to take complete control.
Hmm.
Can you imagine being in first grade, having just moved, and the teacher says, "Class, put your name on your paper in the right place," and you just freeze
Oh, wow.
because you have no idea what that means, and the only response is tears? Or another time, clutching coins, watching friends excitedly leave for the movies, completely unable to utter the simple words, "Wait for me."
Just stuck.
Just stuck. Why the paralysis? Why not ask for help or just call out?
Well, these are such vivid snapshots of young children, or really anyone operating from a fixed mindset. When confronted with something new, something difficult, or, when things just go wrong, they experience this overwhelming sense of powerlessness.
Right.
There's this internal narrative just screaming, "I'm incapable." And what's crucial to understand here is that shifting these deep-seated beliefs isn't like, well, it's not like quick surgery where the old beliefs are just cut away.
Okay.
Instead, new beliefs emerge, and they take their place alongside the old ones. And as these new beliefs gain strength, they offer a fundamentally different way to think, to feel, and crucially, to act. It's more about building new neural pathways, really, than just deleting old ones.
So, if our beliefs are that powerful, how did psychology first really pinpoint their central role in our emotional lives? Where did that start?
It really takes us back to the 1960s and a psychiatrist named Aaron Beck. Now, he wasn't explicitly studying mindsets back then, but he uncovered something absolutely foundational.
Mhm.
He found that much of our emotional distress springs from these almost imperceptible underlying beliefs. Those quick flashes in the mind that tell us things like, "Dr. Beck thinks I'm incompetent," or "This therapy will never work."
Right, those automatic negative thoughts.
Exactly. His pioneering work in cognitive therapy, which was all about teaching people to identify, challenge, and ultimately change these beliefs, truly laid the groundwork. It helped us understand how deeply our interpretive frameworks, our mindsets, shape everything.
That concept of an internal monologue, this constant interpretation of everything, that makes perfect sense. So, how does a fixed mindset frame that interpretation process specifically? What's it sound like inside?
Well, with a fixed mindset, that internal monologue is primarily focused on judgment,
Mhm.
constantly judging.
Okay. Every piece of information, every interaction, every perceived success or setback gets filtered through this judging lens. This means I'm a loser, or maybe the flip side, see, I'm clearly a better person. It's this constant evaluation, a measuring of self-worth against external events.
And the growth mindset, is its internal chatter just quieter, or is it focused on something else entirely?
Oh, it's definitely not quieter. The growth mindset also involves constant monitoring, but its internal monologue shifts from that judgment framework to one of learning and constructive action.
Ah, okay.
It's asking things like, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? How can I help? While cognitive therapy, Beck's work helps temper those extreme judgments, it doesn't necessarily move individuals out of that fixed mindset framework of judgment itself.
I see.
Our deep dive today is precisely about changing that fundamental internal monologue, really shifting it from judging to growing.
What's truly remarkable, though, isn't just how these mindsets work, but how rapidly this shift can begin. It's almost as if just grasping this concept acts as some kind of key. It really can.
Take Maggie, for instance, an aspiring writer. Before learning about this, her fixed mindset insisted artistic ability was just this innate gift, something you either had or you didn't.
Right, not something developed.
Exactly. And this belief, coupled with a deep fear of criticism, completely paralyzed her. She couldn't pursue her dream.
But after internalizing the growth mindset, Maggie's internal monologue utterly transformed. It went from a protective, almost fearful, don't do it, protect your dream, to this empowering, go for it, develop your skills.
Wow.
That's the profound shift. It's not just about trying harder within the old framework. It's a complete reprogramming of identity almost. And she actually did it. She registered for a creative writing class.
That's fantastic. And we saw similar transformations with Jason, right? A student athlete whose entire focus was just locked on winning. Classic fixed mindset.
Win at all costs. Prove yourself.
Yeah. But after truly understanding the growth mindset, he began to embrace learning while competing. He realized that continuous improvement would fundamentally make him a better athlete in the long run.
So his monologue changed from win, prove yourself, to something more like observe, learn, improve. Still competitive, but focused differently.
Exactly. And then there's Tony, who had always just coasted on his natural talents through high school, never really had to try.
A natural genius.
Right. But when sleep deprivation caught up to him in college, his grades plummeted. And this triggered a major personal crisis because his entire self-esteem was tangled up in being that natural genius.
Oof, that's a tough spot.
Definitely. But learning about mindsets helped him shift from that really dangerous, I'm naturally gifted identity to a practical, growth-oriented approach. Okay, let's start to study and sleep and get on with life. He broke a truly self-destructive pattern. These stories, they really highlight a critical, empowering point. While setbacks are, an inevitable part of life, simply knowing about the growth mindset gives you another way to be.
Yeah, it gives you options.
Exactly. It provides not just the courage to embrace ambitious goals and dreams, but maybe more importantly, a tangible, actionable pathway to work toward making them a reality.
And the power of this idea isn't just anecdotal, right? It's been scaled up. There was this mindset workshop developed specifically for adolescents who had completely disengaged from school. These were kids facing serious challenges, often evaluating themselves with a fixed mindset, which naturally led to plummeting motivation and grades.
So what was the core message in these workshops?
It was so simple, yet so revolutionary for many of them. The brain isn't static. It functions remarkably like a muscle, literally.
Okay.
New research shows brain cells don't just strengthen, they actually multiply with practice and learning. This isn't just some nice analogy. It's a profound biological truth that empowers every single learner.
Wow. So telling them their brain could physically change.
Exactly. And the impact was profound. One student, Jimmy, who typically pulled C's, stayed up late revising an assignment after the workshop and earned a B+ to merge. He reportedly said, with tears in his eyes, "You mean I don't have to be dumb?"
Oh, that's powerful.
Another student, R, showed significant grade improvements in math, really valuing that growth, going from scores like 52, 46, 49 up to 67, 71. Improved from failing to an 84, proactively asking for extra help.
So they started taking ownership.
Absolutely. Students like N and S even sought out peer tutoring just for sheer improvement, not just to pass.
And these weren't just isolated cases, right? There was data.
Oh, yeah. The growth mindset group showed a clear, statistically significant jump in math grades compared to a control group.
Yep.
Now, the control group got study skills training, but no mindset training.
And they didn't improve.
They didn't improve. It starkly demonstrated the sheer power of changing mindsets. It suggests that without that fundamental shift in belief about their capacity for growth, they lacked the intrinsic motivation to even put those study skills into practice effectively.
Incredible results. It makes you wonder, though, was there a way to scale that impact even further? To bring this breakthrough to even more students beyond those specific, maybe staff-intensive workshops?
Absolutely. And that's precisely what led to the Brainology program. They took those core principles and developed these interactive computer modules.
Okay, like an online course.
Sort of, yeah, complete with animated characters. Chris and Dahlia, two seventh graders navigating typical school challenges, and Dr. Cerebris, this wonderfully quirky brain scientist. He teaches them about brain growth, healthy habits, and some incredibly effective study strategies.
So making it engaging for that age group.
Exactly. And students engage deeply. They wrote about their changes, saying things like, "Now my attitude towards the subjects I have trouble in is I try harder to study and master the skills."
That's great.
Another student beautifully articulated, "I actually picture my neurons growing bigger as they make more connections." This isn't just rote memorization, it's a really integrated understanding.
And did teachers see a difference too?
They did. They reported that formerly disengaged students were spontaneously using new language, terms like long-term memory and working memory, just in their everyday conversations.
Wow.
They even started offering to practice, study, and take notes more diligently, specifically to, quote, make those neural connections happen.
They bought into the biology of it.
Totally. And what's truly fascinating is that even teachers who initially approached the program with some skepticism gained new insights. They came to understand that all students can learn, recognizing the deep importance of patience and the need to teach for diverse learning styles. Even students who were initially cynical ultimately reported meaningful benefits from the program. It really speaks to the universality of this insight, I think.
So while the initial impact of learning about the growth mindset can be profoundly empowering, you mentioned earlier, change isn't always linear. It's certainly not always easy.
Definitely not.
We heard the story of a grad student who was just utterly devastated by critical reviews of her research paper years of work, seemingly just dismissed. It felt like a direct judgment of her.
Oh yeah, that personal sting. Been there.
Right. But then came the pivotal advice. It's not about you. Their job is to find every possible flaw. Your job is to learn from the critique and make your paper even better.
Shifting the frame.
And that advice immediately changed her approach. Within hours, she was revising her paper, which was then warmly accepted. She learned to embrace that process, always reminding herself, oh, that's their job, and getting to work immediately on her own job improvement.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
But as you said, change is hard. People often cling to a fixed mindset because, honestly, at some point, it served a protective purpose.
How so?
Well, it often provided a kind of formula for self-esteem, maybe a perceived path to love and respect, especially early in life.
Ah, okay. Like needing to appear smart or talented to get approval.
Exactly. Psychologists like Karen Horney and Carl Rogers observed this. Children who feel insecure about acceptance might construct this all-competent self to gain parental approval, and over time, these fixed traits become deeply intertwined with their very identity.
So giving that up.
Giving that up, embracing challenge, welcoming struggle, learning from criticism, navigating setbacks is incredibly difficult. It can feel like losing a core part of who you are.
It truly creates an internal struggle. The author themselves confessed that when they transitioned from a fixed mindset, they felt profoundly unsettled. They used to track daily successes almost like intelligence counters.
Right.
And when they stopped, their mental counters would hit zero, triggering intense feelings of insecurity. The fixed mindset persona would whisper, "You're nothing."
Wow. That shows it's not just an intellectual shift, is it? It's deeply emotional.
Absolutely. And there's also that persistent fear, maybe you felt this, of losing your individuality, becoming bland or ordinary if you fully embrace growth.
Yeah, like you'll lose your edge or what makes you special.
Right. But the truth seems to be the opposite. Opening yourself up to growth makes you more yourself, not less. The growth-oriented scientists, artists, athletes, CEOs we've explored were far from bland.
No, they were often incredibly vibrant and unique.
Exactly. They were people in the full, vibrant flower of their unique potency. Their growth allowed their true, authentic selves to flourish.
Okay. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen the theory, the research, the profound shifts in students. But what happens when life throws you a curveball?
Yeah. When you're staring down that dream grad school rejection or suddenly crumbling under pressure you once thrived on, this is where the rubber meets the road, isn't it?
It really is. Let's imagine you're in one of these moments. Consider that agonizing graduate school rejection. A fixed mindset reaction often starts with rationalization. Oh, it's just too competitive, but it quickly descends into self-judgment. I'm not worthy. My work must be mediocre.
It becomes all about you.
Exactly. The entire focus becomes this desperate attempt to regain lost self-esteem.
But the growth mindset takes a dramatically different step. The rejected applicant, in this true story we read about, actually called the school. Not to argue or dispute the decision,
Hmm.
but to humbly ask for feedback for future improvement. What could I do better next time?
Wow, that takes courage.
It does. And this initiative led to a reevaluation and ultimately acceptance. It's about learning and self-improvement, turning a perceived failure into a genuine opportunity.
And this is where that research by Peter Gulitzer on concrete visualized plans comes in handy, right? Making an if-then plan.
Exactly, like tomorrow during my break, I will call the graduate school. It leads to incredibly high follow-through, even when you're feeling emotionally drained or just bad about the situation.
Okay, or consider the Heisman-winning quarterback, top draft pick for the Eagles, who suddenly feels overwhelmed by the immense pressure of the pros. He's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
A fixed mindset leads to self-torture, hiding insecurities, withdrawing, asking, what happened to the boy wonder? Why am I suddenly so inadequate? It's all about preserving that image of innate talent.
But with a growth mindset, what does he do?
He tells himself, okay, this is a huge step. It requires adjustment and learning. He actively seeks out veteran quarterbacks, asks probing questions, watches tapes obsessively, and maybe even openly discusses his insecurities with coaches or mentors.
So instead of hiding, he learns from those who've been there.
Exactly. Embracing the process of becoming a better, more resilient athlete. It's a choice to be a learner, not just a performer whose talent is fixed.
Okay, how about the person stuck in a seemingly dead-end, low-level job, feeling completely entitled, believing the world owes them more?
Ah, yes. The fixed mindset there blames the boss, feels it's not fair that they have to adapt or do grunt work, believes their inherent talent should just automatically be recognized without further effort.
Right, I shouldn't have to do this.
Mhm. But with a growth mindset, they start considering effort and commitment in a new light. They decide to learn the nuts and bolts of the business from the bottom up. They build relationships, they put in the work, and they realize that their perceived cloak of specialness was actually more like a suit of armor that was constricting their own growth. Our top growth mindset CEOs understood their companies inside out precisely because they embraced learning at every single level.
That makes sense. And finally, imagine a life that appears perfect on the surface, fulfilling career, loving marriage, wonderful children, but privately, your marriage is unraveling due to unaddressed issues.
Yeah, the denial trap. A fixed mindset reaction there is often denial, followed by a complete loss of self-worth when things fall apart, and then maybe a descent into a lifetime of judging everyone, including yourself, for the perceived failure.
So much blame.
So much blame. A growth mindset, in contrast, helps you understand that the marriage likely stopped developing for lack of nourishment. You start to probe deeply into why requests for closeness might have been unheard.
Like maybe your fixed mindset led you to interpret them as criticism instead of a plea for connection.
Precisely. And this understanding leads to genuinely learning communication skills, maybe not for that relationship, but for future ones. The crucial, provocative question here becomes, is someone important in your life trying to tell you something fundamental you're refusing to hear?
Oof, that's a tough one. So we've seen how profound this shift can be personally, but what about fostering growth in others, especially our children? This seems critical.
Absolutely. What if your young son comes home from school and confidently declares, some kids are smart and some kids are dumb. They just have a worse brain.
Mm.
And then he starts avoiding effort, maybe even cheats, just to avoid the discomfort of losing or looking dumb.
Yeah, that's a classic fixed mindset setting in early. What do you do?
This is where you implement what the source called a conspiracy of living the growth mindset at the dinner table. You and your partner consciously start asking different questions,
Okay.
like, what did you learn today? What mistake did you make that taught you something new? What did you really try hard at today? You model this yourself, discussing your own efforts, strategies, maybe even setbacks, and crucially, celebrating the process of learning, not just the perfect outcome.
And when he boasts about doing things easily,
You respond gently, oh, that's too bad. Sounds like you're not really stretching yourself, are you? Can you find something harder to do next time so you could learn more?
the goal is to subtly shift his focus from proving inherent specialness to embracing the inherent joy of effort and challenge.
It's not always about too little effort, though, is it? Sometimes it's too much, but for the entirely wrong reasons.
Exactly. Consider the daughter mentioned who developed an ulcer. She was driven to perfection by parents steeped in a fixed mindset, parents who were constantly seeking external validation through her achievements rather than focusing on her learning for its own sake.
So her self-worth was completely tied to flawless performance. The growth-oriented solution for her involved putting flute lessons on hold, allowing her to relearn the joy in music without the intense pressure. Studying for genuine understanding rather than just grades, having teachers praise the learning process, not just the A.
And critically,
Critically, the parents learning to separate their own needs and expectations from their child's. The question for parents becomes, do you truly know where your child is now? Emotionally, I mean. If you can't hear their unspoken messages, their silent struggles beneath the surface of achievement.
wow. Mindset also profoundly impacts something as fundamental as willpower, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A fixed mindset often dictates that willpower is just this fixed trait you either possess or you don't. I have strong willpower,
Yeah.
or I have weak willpower.
Right, which leads to ineffective vowing.
Exactly. Nathan, for example, kept failing at diets because he believed he had to be strong without any actual strategies. He genuinely thought simply wanting it badly enough was enough to resist temptation.
He ended up on these crash diets for every reunion, inevitably gaining back more than he lost. Classic yo-yo dieting.
Right. A growth mindset, in contrast, understands that willpower needs help. It's not just about brute force. It requires learned strategies,
Like what?
like actively removing desserts from the house, pre-planning restaurant orders, scheduling deliberate splurges so you don't feel deprived, exercising to boost energy and mood, and engaging in active, ongoing maintenance.
And setbacks.
Setbacks aren't catastrophic failures proving you lack willpower. They're valuable learning opportunities to refine your approach. Okay, that didn't work. What can I try next time?
The same wisdom applies to controlling anger, too.
Definitely.
Ah.
A fixed mindset might vow to change after an outburst, maybe feel guilty, but without addressing the underlying emotional triggers or developing concrete strategies, the cycle just repeats itself. Anger feels like an uncontrollable trait.
So with a growth mindset,
You begin to understand the underlying feeling, perhaps a deep sense of being devalued, when your partner repeatedly forgets to do something you asked. It's not just about the forgotten task. Right, it's the meaning you attach to it. Exactly. So instead of a fixed mindset's angry retaliation, a growth mindset involves things like matter-of-factly communicating those feelings. When you do that, it makes me feel unimportant. It might mean requesting reassurance or even physically leaving the room to write down your thoughts and diffuse the immediate tension.
so practical strategies again.
Yes, and consciously loosening rigid rules you hold for others, developing a little humor about minor infractions. This allows for useful strategies instead of just falling into that spiral of self-judgment and escalation.
This discussion so far powerfully illustrates that change, while often immediate and impactful initially, absolutely must be maintained.
Yes, this is key. Once a problem improves, people often stop the very actions and mindsets that caused the improvement in the first place. It's like stopping your antibiotics the moment you start feeling better.
And here's where it gets particularly tricky. If someone stays fundamentally in a fixed mindset, but tries to superficially adopt growth strategies, it can actually backfire, can't it?
It really can.
Oh,
We saw this with Wes, the dad who temporarily adopted growth-oriented praise for his son Mickey. It dramatically improved Mickey's behavior for a while.
okay.
But as soon as Mickey improved, Wes stopped those strategies. He just expected the good behavior to continue automatically. And when it inevitably didn't, he became even angrier and more punitive than before. He felt tricked almost.
Oh, because the underlying mindset hadn't shifted.
Exactly. A similar pattern emerged with a couple dubbed the Bickersons. Counseling helped them stop focusing on negatives and start rewarding positive efforts, which brought back their affection.
Sounds good.
But in their fixed mindset, they believed good relationships shouldn't require effort. They should just be good, naturally. So they reverted to their old patterns, and the bickering apparently became fiercer than ever. The core difference, the true shift we're talking about, is from a fundamental judge and be judged framework to a learn and help learn framework. True growth demands sustained commitment and mutual support within that new framework.
So how do we truly embark on this journey to a true growth mindset? It sounds less like flipping a switch and more like, well, a journey.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's not a destination. It's a dynamic, ongoing process. The source outlines 4 key steps.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1, embrace your fixed mindset. Just acknowledge it. Everyone has some of it. It's an inherent part of being human. It doesn't mean you are fixed. It just means you have fixed mindset thoughts and tendencies sometimes. Embrace it without shame.
Okay, except it's there. Step 2.
Step 2, become acutely aware of your fixed mindset triggers. When does your fixed mindset persona, as the author calls it, typically appear? Is it when you're facing a big challenge? when you're struggling, experiencing a definitive failure, or maybe when you encounter someone who seems inherently better than you at something.
What does it whisper in your ear then?
Exactly. As one person vividly described, when I'm under pressure, my fixed mindset persona appears. He fills my head with noise and keeps me from paying attention to the work I have to do. Just observe it. Don't judge it. Become like a curious anthropologist of your own mind.
I like that. Okay, step 3.
Step 3. Give your fixed mindset persona a name. This sounds a bit strange, maybe, but externalizing it is incredibly powerful.
Really?
Yeah. Financial executives name their personas Dwayne or Iani to understand their impact. Students use names like Gertrude, Sugar Daddy, Henrietta, or Dumping Dan.
Ah,
Naming it helps you distance yourself just enough to understand its influence without it consuming you. You realize it's not you, it's just a part of you that's trying to protect you, often in an old, unhelpful way.
right, like that student who named her critical inner voice Z, the one who screams stupid, stupid, stupid after a rejection.
But then, for a later assignment, that same student courageously contacted the newspaper she was rejected from, asked for feedback, and eventually got a writing job there, proving she could educate her Z. She didn't eliminate Z, she worked with Z.
That's brilliant. Okay, so embrace, become aware, name. What's step 4?
And step 4, educate your persona. You don't try to suppress it or fight it directly, you engage with it.
How?
When your fixed mindset warns you against a challenge, don't do it, you'll fail. Thank it for its input, acknowledge its fear. Okay, Z, I hear you're worried about looking stupid, but explain your desire to try anyway, and invite it along on the journey.
Like talking to it.
Yeah, having a dialogue. When setbacks occur, let it express itself. See, I told you. Then discuss how to learn from it and move forward. Help it understand the new, growth-oriented ways it can actually support you, rather than just trying to keep you safe in the old way.
And this fosters self-compassion.
Deep self-compassion, which in turn naturally extends to compassion for others' struggles. It helps shift us all from that default mode of judgment to one of support.
Ultimately, then, it comes down to a daily practice of learn and help learn.
That's the essence. Ask yourself regularly, what are the opportunities for learning and growth today, for myself and for the people around me?
And remember Peter Gollwitzer's research on implementation intentions? When you identify those opportunities, form a concrete plan.
Exactly. When, where, and how will you act on it? Even if you feel bad, as the author says, do good anyway, persist. Often the positive emotion follows the action, not the other way around.
And as Alex Rodriguez, the baseball player, wisely put it, you either go one way or the other. You might as well be the one consciously deciding the direction, right? So how do we keep this engine of growth revving, even when the initial excitement fades? What will you, listening right now, do to maintain and continue your growth every single day?
That's the ongoing question.
Embracing a growth mindset isn't some miraculous overnight cure for all your problems, but as we've seen today, it's a profoundly transformative journey. It really does lead to a richer, more courageous, and more open life, allowing you to build and nurture things you never thought possible.
It opens doors.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If your mindset is constantly shaping your reality, how much of your current self is actually a reflection of fixed beliefs you can actively choose to change? And what entirely new possibilities might emerge if you decide to consciously direct that change, starting today and continuing every single day?
The growth mindset is always there, isn't it? Showing you a path into the future.
A path that's yours to walk, to build, and ultimately to evolve along.